So let's take a look at exciting and productive meetings. What are the things that we can do? When I worked as a salesperson for the CJCH Radio and C100 in Halifax, Nova Scotia, the sales manager was a guy named Chuck Langdon. And Chuck was a guy that his shoulders came about here to me, okay? Great big guy, and he looked like the $1 Million Man. He actually did. He had the gold rimmed glasses, and I couldn't believe how much he looked like him. And Chuck used to run these very gregarious meetings, and everything was team, and it had to happen, and a good guy to work with. And I had a habit of showing up at meetings at late. Okay. And I guess, as I said before, the leopard doesn't change its spots. Okay. And I come in this one morning, and I come rolling into the sales meeting, and my car hadn't started, and I forget there were some problems at home, and it was raining, whatever reason that I always had, because I always had a good one. And I'm not suggesting to the salespeople that they should do this and get away with it. But I tell you one thing, and I say to the salespeople, is that if you're a salesperson, be a top producer, and you'll be amazed how the lines do move as far as restrictions, if you're the top person. Okay? And I come rolling into this sales meeting, and Chuck was sitting there, and he was annoyed, believe me. And he looked at me, and he said, "Late again, Gibson, huh?" And I looked at him, and I said, "Yeah." I said, "If your meetings were a little more interesting, I'd probably be on time." He said, "If you think you're so smart, why don't you run the next meeting?" And I said, "I'd love to." He said, "Why don't you just shut up and sit down, and I know it's going to be difficult for you." So we had a very good relationship going at that point. So I sat down, and the meeting started, and we went through the meeting, and at the end of the meeting, he looked at me, and he said, and he had a very big finger, okay? It used to be about that long, I remember. And he looked at me, and he said, "I want to see you in my office." And I said, "Yes." I had lost my courage. So we go into the office, and I'm walking behind Chuck. You know, before we get in the office, I'm saying, "Chuck, look, I apologize, okay? Like, I really am sorry. I really shouldn't have said that because I was late, and, you know, I know I'm disruptive." And he shut the door. He said, "Look, sit down." And he said, "You know what really upset me about you in that meeting and what you said?" I said, "What?" He said, "It's the truth." He said, "My meetings are boring." He says, "And I'm getting bored with my own meetings." And he said, "But you know when I said to you, why don't you run it?" And you said, "Yes, I will." He said, "Why don't you next week? Why don't you?" He said, "Maybe we should change things around here." And he said, "Maybe I shouldn't be running the sales meetings every week as a sales manager." How many people can relate to being a sales manager and having to try and motivate the same people week after week after week? Can you relate to that? Can you relate the job that it is? Has anybody here ever been in charge of some meetings on a regular basis? Okay? It is one big job. Okay? It's an impossible job. Okay? And it's a non-thankful job. Okay? Because you're the one in charge, and do you think when people leave there after the meeting's over, they leave, and when they say, "Hey, let's go for a coffee," you think they go and talk about how great the meeting was? They go talk about what was wrong with the meeting, and the same old stuff happened. Okay, that's what they do in most cases. So Chuck says, "Why don't you do it?" He said, "And put an effort into it. You're creative, and do it. Like, whatever you want to do, you go do it." He said, "I'll have to do the numbers thing, but after that, it's your meeting." He said, "And if it works, then why don't we every second meeting have one of the salespeople run the meeting?" And he said, "Takes the weight off of me, gets everybody to see what it's like to have to be the sales manager around here." Okay? And it could be fun. He said, "You guys are all competitive as a son of a gun with each other, so we should get some real good meetings." So I said, "Okay, I will." And he helped me, and I put together a heck of a meeting. Okay? And the only thing what he did to, can you imagine what he did to me, though, at the start of the meeting? He arrived late. And he sat down, and he chatted to people, and he was really disorderly, you know. And he actually set some of the other guys up to do the same thing to me, you know, because just to show me what it was like. But But I ran the meeting extremely well, and at the end of the meeting, we broke the news to the rest of the staff about what we were thinking. Everybody says it's a good idea. And to date, and it's, I think, 18 or 19 years later, they're still doing that at that radio station. Okay. So as a sales manager, who says that you have to do it all? Okay. You don't. Matter of fact, people love responsibility. Herzberg's theory of motivation. Give people recognition, it's a motivator, but one of them is responsibility. Because when you take responsibility, you grow, and when you grow, you feel good.